It's your boy Jovi Mr. Royalty back again with another quality. This is a place where you come to stay, where lives are being changed and impacted each and every day. Now, some of you have been wondering where I have been. Yes, I've been MIA for a while, and that's because I've been busy working on my joint channel On the Couch with D and J. That's Dean and Joe and Jove and myself here. That's where you can come to get all your relationship advice and more. So the link is in the description. You can go there, become a part of that family as well. We thank you. If you have not yet been a part of this family since the inception, over here is where you have a buzz. So I just ask you to do one thing. Hit that subscribe button. Yes, it's free. And don't make me you have nothing. It is indeed a pleasure to be your host on this Jovi Mr. Royalty. Over here, we share messages of hope, inspiration, education, and life nuggets. May as you come here and you sit, you have your meals, you will enjoy each and every message that I have to share with you. Come on board. Welcome back. Thank you for staying tuned. So today I'll be sharing with you, my first episode of my new season, my podcast. Come on, let's get right into it. Beside me, I have my guest, Latoya Anderson. Very good friend of mine, a very beautiful mother, a very beautiful lady, a woman of God. You'll hear a lot more about that because there's a lot of things that we're going to be unpacking and uncovering today. You see, sometimes you can't look at someone and tell their story. But the story that we're about to hear today from my guest is one that you'll never ever imagine just by looking at her. I know a little bit of some of the stories, but I said that little time that we spoke never really got to reveal everything. So this is the hot seat, but also a safe space.
Is it?
You want to pray, bro? I need to pray too. Because this is serious. Be real with us today.
Yeah.
Just keep it real 100%. Your childhood days. What was life like?
Wow. Growing up as a child, that would have been in the 80s.
Don't try to figure
It
out
would
the
have been
age
in
now.
the 80s, but things were so different back then from now. I remember having a conversation with my son recently, and he said, "Wow, mommy, you had such a boring life." Because I grew up when the television had to sign off at 12 o'clock. When there was no cable. I grew up in the country. Yes. I grew up in the country with a spring in my yard with books. Going to church with my parents on Sabbaths, on Saturdays, going to school was a fairly humble beginning. So we didn't have the facilities to be going out all the time at all. So it was really mostly church, home, and school. And if there's a church social, 1 or 2 times. Maybe I remember going to a beach trip like maybe about 2 times for the entire time I was back home. So it was mostly just meeting up with my cousins who were close by, reading, church activities, and just spending time with myself.
Yes.
So there wasn't much that I did, but still, though I was bored at times, I would say it was a good childhood.
A good childhood.
Yes.
You mentioned a few things that reminded me of myself. So for me, I used to be homeschooled church, but my childhood was also one that I was able to be exposed to different things. I went on different beach trips, went to church trips, I went to camping, I did a lot of things, but that will be for another story, for another time.
Right.
But you do seem to have had, just a little bit of fun time in your childhood days. Not so much sheltered though. So it means that you maybe would have had some time to say, let me meet a little guy here, a guy there. But were you allowed to have guy friends and boyfriends and those
things? That's something because while we were allowed, my sister and I were allowed to go to spaces or church socials. We were only allowed to go places if our parents were going to be there. So I was raised really sheltered, on contrary to what maybe persons would think. I was really raised in a very sheltered environment. My parents, my father was an elder at church. My mother, Sabbath school leader. I was also very involved. So we were raised very sheltered. Initially, I didn't know that I was being sheltered,
Yeah.
because I'm an only child for my dad.
Okay.
I'm his only biological child. And being a girl, naturally, he's going to be, covering
Yeah.
and protecting and all of that. So when I wouldn't live on the roadside or the side of the road like other persons. My house was far, it's country.
Yeah.
So it's down the lane and, the last house on the lane and all of that. So my father would come for me when I'm coming from school, and when I'm going to school he would take me, and persons would think that he's watching me, but I didn't feel that way, because we had that relationship where I felt safe enough for him to be there. I actually wanted him to be there. I didn't know that it was maybe a tactic or a way of just protecting or a strategy. I just felt safe that my daddy is doing this, and my daddy's girl to this day. And so really raised quite sheltered. I remember literally going to only 3 beach trips for the entire time that I was at home, and 1 camping trip at East Jamaica Conference of Seventh-day Adventist camp at Robbins Bay. 1 camp experience, and only 3 beach trips. And my parents had to be there. My father was there for 1 of them, and I had older cousins, male cousins, that were there for the other 2. But I also remember wanting to go to a beach trip, and mommy going to bed and dreaming that something happened, and she said, "No, you're not going."
And you just
We couldn't go because that was it. But I was raised pretty sheltered, and a lot of exposure I didn't have. But you know how it is when you're raised like that and you didn't have that exposure. You craved for it because it's not something that you know. But in a nutshell, that was just a snippet of my childhood. Getting up early, having to do devotions every morning, falling asleep in devotion, and waking up back to try to sing, going to church, doing all of that. Yes, I wanted to have friends, but the boys who liked me, they were afraid of my parents, because my parents were very strict. Yes. And then my father was a very quiet man. He's not an outspoken man. So persons were really afraid of my dad. And then my mother, she's outspoken, but she's also very strict. So church guys were afraid of them, especially mommy. And the guys in the community, I said, no. But I mean, me being the church kid, always wanted to know what would it be like to date a guy, especially that's not in the church alone, to just kind of get that vibe and the energy to see what it would be like to have that exposure. But
and when you touch on that whole thing about guys outside of the church, that's one big thing that we have, because growing up, you mentioned Seventh-day Adventist, so you grew up in the Seventh-day Adventist church, and we know that there are certain principles, there are certain things that we have as fundamental beliefs that, hey, we should not be unequally yoked, which unequally yoked doesn't have to only be that you're actually unequally yoked with somebody outside of your denomination, but you have a lot of different things, because we are also unequally yoked within the church, right? So that is one thing that we always preach, so I can just imagine how your parents, who were so overprotective of you, if they even might have seen you with a guy outside of the church, how they were like, hey,
no, that's not happening.
Not happening.
That's not happening at all.
But boy, I think listening to that just now, it brought me to a place where I remember when I used to grow up and I used to be at church, I used to just run around with different girls, and just a little bit of my story here. It was so fun in those days, because you could get a little sweetie bite at the shop and you take it to the girl and you say, hey, you're not really thinking about anything sexy, while you're not thinking about, hey, can I go? But a little time, you might touch a girl here and there in some inappropriate places, and you try to hide from the pastor or the elder, or the bubby little guardian that they put there to watch you. So I mean, were you like that type of person? You used to like go maybe hide and go around the corner with a guy, or
the truth is, I wasn't allowed to hide. as I said, it was such a sheltered environment, and my parents, especially my mom, had this situation where she said, "Don't embarrass me." I mean, it wasn't a squeaky. I wasn't squeaky clean. I was also very daring, and I still am. Sometimes when I see my son being daring, I'm like, "This is payback," you know.
Come on.
But I was also very daring. But my mother would say, "You know what? Don't let me find you on the road with anybody. Let them come to the house." So they had to dread that. They had to go through that. So if you want to see me, come to my house. If you want to vibe with me, come to my house.
To your house.
Yeah, so that was that kind of energy. And then at one point my home was a space where young persons would be. So a lot of young persons would be at my house. I didn't get much time to really do much, because of being sheltered. Of course, I sneaked around and stuff, but you know, the principles behind everything that I'm expected to do, it was always in the back of my mind that, you know, there's a distance to where you can really go.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. But you know, as you said that you always had that in the back of your mind.
Right.
But was there like ever a time when you said that, boy, you know, I'm just gonna rebel? Boy, I just want to do something on my own. I can't bother with the parents' restriction anymore. You know, yeah, anything in that nature.
With that regard, the rebellion, before the rebellion, the state of rebellion for me came much later. Like, I've been doing this thing all my life, and the standards and the expectations were so high.
Yeah.
Like, I felt stifled at points. They did all that they could the best way they could. And I remember my mother said to me, I have to keep my hand on you, you know, because I know, you know, you know your child. And I suppose she figured that if she didn't keep a tight rein on me, I would have gone far out, all the way out. But the reality is, we knew the Bible does say, train up a child in the way you should go. When he's old, he will not depart from it. The funny thing, though, you didn't ask, but I'm gonna mention that even though I wanted sometimes to date guys that were not Seventh-day Adventists, that were not Christians, the funny thing is that I date guys who were SDAs, who were Christians, and I felt pressure from the guys in the church oftentimes.
What kind of pressure you talking about?
I did feel more sexual pressure from the guys in the church that I was dating than, yes. That's always a shock when I tell persons. I felt more, yes, I did feel more pressure. The guys who were not Christians, funny enough, they would maybe be more understanding that I don't want to go that far. But the guys who were in the church, like, it was the norm. You're not a Christian, so why can't we do this? You know, I've had a few breakups with Adventists, Seventh-day Adventist guys. And I'm not putting a bad light on our church. There are great guys there. But I remember one particular time I went all the way to St. Catherine to this guy's church, because that was a thing. Growing up, you go to each other's churches and you travel and you just date and you have a good time. But there's one particular guy I was dating, and I say, oh, we're doing it right and everything, and it felt good. This was marriage at that age. You know, think it's gonna go there.
So it was around, like,
I was about 16.
Around 16?
Yes. But it was okay, because, you know, my parents are saying, you know, you're at an age now, I can trust you to go to another church. And it's church you're going. You've manifested that I can trust you, so why not? I remember traveling all the way from St. Mary, where I'm from, to St. Catherine to go to this guy's church. And I couldn't figure out why he was behaving all funny. And the guy said to me, oh, if you and I don't sleep right now, I'm going to break up with you. And literally on the spot, he broke up with me right there. I went back home to my father. I couldn't talk to my mother because I just felt that somehow she was feeling that maybe if she never allowed me to, I felt some sort of way that I would be judged. But I talked to Daddy, and Daddy would just listen. And I said to him, you know, he broke up with me because I didn't know that maybe fathers and daughters were supposed to have that weird conversation. But I remember crying in my daddy's lap and falling asleep that Saturday night in the couch in the living room, and he was saying it's okay, and rubbing my head and saying it's okay. In his head he might be saying thank God. But I see her 16. But I'm like, I fell asleep in my dad's lap. I remember crying and saying, I'm not ready. And he's like, don't mind, it's okay. You know, when God is ready and in a man, he must say, because he's a man. And before being in the church and getting baptized, as he wasn't born and raised Seventh-day Adventist or really Christian, he went to church, but he was in the streets. So he know how this thing goes. So he was happy, I'm sure, when I told him that, you know, I wasn't really ready at the time. So for me, you asked about rebellion. The rebellion for me didn't come until years later. Literally, the rebellion came when I started living on my own.
Tell me more. Because it's one thing when you lived with parents and you grew up with certain principles, with certain restrictions, certain, hey, do this, do that. So you have to follow by their rules. But when you're now in your own space, you're a bigger man now, you push your own key to your door.
It's a new thing. It's a new thing. But so I had that opportunity to do that before, because leaving home, going to UWI to, you know, pursue my studies, and I went there. It was the talk from my parents, and not just my parents, persons in the community. I remember this lady in the community, she called me and she said, "You get through for go UWI?" And I said to her, "Yes." She said, "I don't have nothing for you now, but I this I have." And she packaged some runners. I don't know if you know those things that you put on the dresser. And she packaged some runners and she gave them to me, and she said, "Now go up the gun in front of nobody. Remember where you come from. I remember when." And she hugged me and she gave that to me. You know, that was that lady in the community. She was like a mother in the community. And then of course my parents, you know, gave me the talk. Don't go up there and embarrass us. Remember where you're coming from. You're a youth leader. And I'm like, yeah. But you know, I couldn't say that face. But I got the talk, and then persons from church were like, you know, "Sister, you're going away, you know, we're happy for you, you know, God will work it out and all that." So you know that they're depending on you to do what's right. So when I went to UWI, it was just really focusing, I have to get this. I was the first to enter into university from my mother's side of the family. So I had so much on my shoulders hanging. I had to get out of there and do well, make everybody proud. And I had to ensure that I did what was right. So I went to UWI and found Advent Fellowship. That would have been the fraternity, the Seventh-day Adventist fraternity at UWI. Found like what we call ADFEL, and found like friends who were also sheltered. Us, all we want to break out, but we're afraid. We don't want to disappoint anybody. And so I became very involved. It was really from studying to going to Advent Fellowship on a Friday night, to going to different churches to perform, to minister on a Sabbath morning. In the evening, it would be sign language and choir practice, and on Sundays, right back to doing the same thing. And then in the week we're going, and that was fun for us. You know, I can tell you, I went through UWI for 3 years and never went to a party, never went no freshers fete. No.
I'm wilding out there, Fred.
I had the perfect opportunity, and maybe I should have done it at that point. But I had the perfect opportunity to wild out there, but I didn't during that time. The rebellion came afterwards when I started working in the bank. And I was just, you could smell that I was inexperienced. Like you could know. I already had a conversation in the bank on what was something that I was supposed to know sexually, and I had no idea. And the entire lunchroom laughed at me because I'm like, "What are they talking about?" I'm saying, "All right, nobody try to find out." It's okay. You know, but that being me, I became more curious. But that was when I really kind of just pulled away from, I say, you know what? I had natural hair, long natural hair, and like now it's short. And I say, I'm gonna process my hair and I'm gonna color it red. All in one go.
Nice.
And I did.
Yes.
And I remember my daddy came into the bank because he would be so proud to know that, you know, I got, coming from a humble beginning, I raised my daughter to this place and she's now working in a job. My father would just come in the bank sometimes and just look at me, and he would just walk back out and he would call me and say, you know, I saw you today. Why were you so upset? I'm like, you couldn't stop coming to look at me and come out. And he would just do that. And I remember one day he called me in the evening and said, why are you quenching the ear?
Yeah, I get what you.
And he's like, you going to tell your mother that, not me. I'm like, all right, she's not going to die. And that was it. But I really wild out at that point. And for me, wild out was maybe not as bad as some persons, but for me it was
Yeah.
growing up being really sheltered and all of that. But that was when I started rebelling. I wanted to do stuff, to
Yes.
know what a party was like, to know what it was like to do other, stuff. I just wanted to have a good time, and
Time.
yeah,
You know, when you said that was when you started to rebel and started just do you, one thing came to mind is sometimes when we do stuff that we know we want to do,
yeah.
we end up going into a wrong direction.
Look
You
here.
know what I mean? And trust me, I can tell you over the years, I have been like one of the rudest, at my church, I used to do all sort of different something.
Yeah.
And it was like I said, but if I don't follow the rule, I'm going to have to suffer the consequences,
Right.
you know. And so I recall a lot of females in my younger days, they used to do things and then when they actually went home, the parents would either spank them and say, hey, they don't want to see them around anybody like that again, and so what they would normally do from time to time is they'll come back and they still go ahead and do what they want to do, but what happened is that it leads them further and further. I think that sometimes with like parents who maybe have you sheltered, it
Right.
can lead you going into a path where you just want to do
Oh
things on
yes.
your own,
Oh yes.
and so
Balance. You need a
you need
balance.
that,
And sometimes
know.
your parents don't know. They don't have a book on how to raise you.
No.
So when I say sheltered, I mean I was not allowed to wear pants growing up. No sleeveless. My hair being colored was a no. Makeup that I'm wearing now was a no. I wasn't allowed to wear clear nail polish, a lot of things, but that was what they knew.
Yeah.
And those were some boundaries that I'm thinking, you could have just allow me to do a little bit. But that was what they knew, and they taught us the best way that they knew how, along with other things. And it was just, I just wanted a break from some of that. I wouldn't have in my mind gone too far, but then
Yeah.
again, what is too far?
Too far.
Yeah, what's too far?
But sometimes, I just believe that sometimes the parents, you try to impose a lot of things on your children. And yes, you want to guide them. You want to give them the right step to follow. But allow them, give them the room to see that, hey, listen, the reason why I'm saying not to do this is because of this.
Right.
Even
Oh,
though
yes.
we don't have to follow the same mistakes because, with age comes wisdom, and experience as well. So they know exactly what they are telling us,
Yes.
and so we should follow. So I'm not saying that we should always want to do things on our way, but there are different ways to go about things. We're in a different generation
Yes.
now, and we have to always remember that, right? But then one thing came to mind just now, right? I remember you said that I heard something about marriage,
Right.
So you had a childhood where you had parents pretty much giving you a little bit of space to do what you want to do, but at the same time, they have you in a restricted
Yeah.
environment. So some things you never really got the exposure to,
Right.
right? But now, at this age where you were at now, where you started to say, hey, I'm a bigger man now, I'm living on my own.
Yes.
What was that like? Because you're now in adulthood, right? And you're now getting exposure to a lot of things around you. How comes growing up in that background that you grew up with, that family, how did you end up getting to a intimate
Relationship.
space with somebody? What was that like? Were you like, oh my gosh, I don't know nothing about sex, I don't know nothing about touch, none of them things there. What was it like? Were you
Of course you were
eager to get,
petting.
you
You
know,
were
what
What?
tell
You
me
were
about that,
petting. Of
what was it like?
course. I mean, the reality, let's just be frank
Yeah.
here. There are a lot of persons who feel that because you don't have, there isn't penetration, that you're not doing stuff. There may not have been penetration, but you were sexual, you were intimate. And that's something that persons at church, while our church, we do have that department that really speaks to everything, each department that speaks to all aspects of our lives.
Yes.
The reality is, I was raised in a very sheltered it's a country church, so there are some details that they're not going to talk about.
Yeah.
And there are details now that maybe I'm very open with my youth about that persons weren't open to at the time. And when I speak to young persons now and I say, listen to me, when you are hearing not to have sex before marriage, there's so much more to it
Yeah.
than just that.
Tell us.
But there are a lot of persons who you're not having sex, you're not having intercourse, but you're not having penetration,
Yeah.
but you're doing other stuff. There are young people now who are having oral sex. They're having
Hot topic,
a
you know.
lot of stuff,
You're touching
but
on
you're
something.
feeling that, oh, because I'm not penetrating, I'm still a virgin, both male and female, so we're good. But the reality of the matter is that the intimacy that you're having, and it is really robbing from the purity that you really need to have.
Yeah.
And so of course there was petting and stuff and all of that. But for me, there was a transition in space where I really just let loose to where I met my husband. So I always felt like when I dated church guys, like it just is not happening. And this was what the enemy wanted me to believe, that if you do what's right, it's not going to work out. And I remember dating someone for 4 years. My university.
Congrats to you.
Yeah.
So it was in university.
We
that
were
you
in
met this
university.
person?
We met, dated for 4 years, and we thought that this was gonna be it. But I remember I was really hurt when the guy said to me, you know, my mom just don't think that you're the one. And I'm like, why? I'm Christian, you're Christian, we're doing things right. We're not having sex. And I mean, more than likely he's gonna see this, because this is gonna be public now. More than likely he's gonna see this, and so I can speak with clarity that, you know, we didn't have penetration and intercourse. We petted, of course. But I'm like, we're not having sex. I'm an ambitious girl. I know I'm a beautiful girl.
Yes, indeed.
So my dad told me I'm beautiful.
And you know that you're beautiful.
And
you're beautiful.
and I didn't know. And I'm a good girl. Why wouldn't she want me for you? And he just plainly told me that, you know, she believed that I have a type, and whatever the type is, just not you. And she sees me with the brown skin, long hair type. And I was crushed. I was so crushed, because I'm like,
It's hurtful though.
it was hurtful. And I battled with that for a little while. During this time, I met my husband that I got married to. Well, pretty much ex-husband now. And I remember meeting him, and he's like, why is this guy not marrying you? And none of us could understand it until the guy told me. And I'm like, but this is a Christian family, Christian home. You know, why would she reject me like this? And the spirit of rejection came in play at that point. And I just said, you know what? I'm done with these church guys. I'm just done. I'm going to do what I want to do. I don't care what nobody say. And I would go to church still. And I remember I was born on the 1st of November. So I remember I got my hair red and everything and went to my first party. Never know you must dress hot, so I went in a maxi dress. I'm like, why is everybody looking like I'm in a maxi dress? So anyway, I'm here, so I'm going to enjoy myself. And I danced at that party. And I remember the guy that I married said to me, all right, come. I remember drinking half of an ice, a Smirnoff ice, and I laughed. Look here, drunk like a mad. Not used to alcohol, because you know our church don't
Yeah,
we
we
don't
don't work on
no.
that.
Drunk. And I laughed. And he's like, yo, I'm going to take her home. This was after that breakup with that guy. And he took me home and went back to the party. And I remember one day I said to him, I'm going to pierce my navel. What you think? And he's like, no. No. You're just taking it too far. I'm like, but I want a tattoo. Like, I want a scorpion around here in my back. Can I get... I was born the 1st of November. So why not? Them time there, you know, everything up.
Yeah.
I say, yeah, a proper hot girl. So I thought that this was it. And I remember him saying to me, I'm not a Christian, but I am not going to allow you to do this. And I'm like, why? Aren't you guys going to the party and all that? And he's like, no, Lati, this is not you. This an unsaved guy telling me that. And he said, hey, if you want to just experience life a little bit, yeah, I'll take you to a few parties. And I wasn't a chain person I didn't go to do chain parties.
Yeah.
I would maybe go a 1 or 2 party for the year. And he would take me and kind of shelter me. But something was strange because I don't want nobody to dance on me. You know, you're whining and you enjoy. No, I'm not here with you. Don't dance with me. And persons are like, what's wrong with her? You know, I'll dance with him.
That is strange.
But they're like, huh? I remember one day I was in the party, and this is how the voice of the Lord really works. I was in a mini dress, and not forgetting a gray mini dress, hair all done, makeup all done, everything. Of course, my ears not pierced, so I suppose that gave me to a point. Didn't want to dance with anybody but the guy that I went with. And a guy came behind me to dance. He was someone in the bank, because at the time only bank parties I went to, nowhere else.
Sure.
And he came into the party, and he decided that he was going to dance with me, and he said, you know, you look nice. And I'm like, thank you. And having, of course, a good time, and he was there, wanted to dance with me, and he's like, but you're not dancing. Him say, you're a Christian, not true. Him say, go home, babes, it's not enough for you. Look at the Holy Spirit.
Hey, you know.
He said, him said, just go home. It's not enough for you. And I still was there. No, I was still there. I was still there. But it's something that I always remembered.
Wow. Hey, you know, remember when you said that in college days, right? When I used to go to Maritime, there used to be some parties, especially like on Friday nights, I would go. And I felt so awkward. I felt so out of it because I knew that this wasn't a place I should be. Because the next day I have church.
It's Sabbath, yeah.
I understand exactly. And so I was like, yo, this place not feel like me. You know, even though I'm a person, I love the party life, and everybody will know me know that I'm a dancer and I love that world. So thank God for church, because I think me that out there, you know, in the world I do some dancing, something if it wasn't for that. But I felt as if this wasn't where I needed to be, or shouldn't be.
Not your calling at all.
You know?
Not.
And as you mentioned that, it reminded me of a time when I was just there standing up, and I was just looking and saying, boy, people just a drink, enjoy themselves, girl I get fling up in the ear all over. And I was like, this is a wild goose chase place with man I run from over this up, get a girl and jump on her. It just felt as if I was in a jungle, you know. And that same thing that you said that gentleman told you, somebody came and said, yo, what you doing, sir?
Yeah.
You don't have church tomorrow.
They always know that you're out of place. They always know that this is not you.
Yeah.
This is not your place. This is not where you're supposed to be. And you're like, but I think I'm fitting in. No, you're not. There's a mark on you even when you're in the pit of hell. There's a mark on God's people.
Facts.
And it doesn't matter. Facts. He will use anybody to remind you who you are. So, you know, I went through all of that. And remember, the guy that I eventually started dating was not a Christian, eventually married, not a Christian. Persons would think that I backslid because of him. No, not at all. A lot of the times that guy was the one that kept me I got in my flesh, and I addressed it, and I said, you know, she called the phone, his phone, he opened the line, and I said, but she need to wait. And I didn't say it in a nice way either.
Stand up on your feet.
Not even stand up on my feet. I said, she need to wait.
Yeah.
Flesh. And the Lord cannot reign and rule where flesh is. You have to submit to God.
Royalty.